After Jinwoo tells the remaining monarch that the real war begins after receiving his shadow army left by the previous monarch Ashborn, the scene shifted to
Korean Hunters Association a few days later, where members discuss the demands from the Federal Bureau and foreign press for a statement about recent events and Jinwoo's whereabouts. One member informs the group that the host of the Jimmy Show from the Hunters channel wants to interview Jinwoo. Another member irritatingly suggests that Jimmy should find Jinwoo himself if he wants an interview. One member wonders why Jinwoo's summoned beasts emerged from the gate, and Chairman Woo retorts by asking if he would prefer the actual beasts to come out instead of shadows. The member begins sweating at the thought. Chairman Woo explains that they should be grateful for only answering silly media questions rather than receiving calls from the families of deceased hunters. Manager Woo reflects on how Jinwoo absorbed over 100,000 beasts into his army and notes that this is not the first time Jinwoo has vanished. He urges the others to understand that Jinwoo also needs peace and time to himself. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jinwoo, who is watching a battle between his shadows. Bellion is impressed by Jinwoo's idea of dividing his army into two parts and making them fight each other. Jinwoo explains that since his shadows cannot die, this battle poses no problem. Suddenly, Beru approaches Jinwoo and requests to be tested for the position of Grand Marshal. Bellion immediately understands the meaning behind Beru's words and accepts the challenge. Beru formally challenges Bellion to a duel for the position of Grand Marshal. Jinwoo becomes excited to witness a fight between two of his strongest shadows. Beru roars in an attempt to intimidate Bellion, but Bellion calmly draws his massive longsword. Jinwoo notices that Bellion wields a broadsword similar to Igris, but realizes that Bellion's sword and build are much larger. He wonders if Bellion's specialty lies in strength rather than speed. Beru dashes at Bellion, and Jinwoo predicts that Beru might have the advantage due to his speed and agility against an opponent with higher strength but less agility. Suddenly, Bellion uses his blade like a centipede to whip Beru. Jinwoo is shocked to see the sword being used in such a way. Beru barely dodges the attack, but Bellion strikes again, slamming Beru to the ground and ending the fight with a single blow. Jinwoo is surprised that the fight ends so quickly and realizes that Bellion neutralized Beru's agility in an instant. He observes that Bellion's reflexes are far better than expected, and that his single blow is powerful enough to crumble the earth. Jinwoo praises Bellion's strength and understands why he is the Grand Marshal. Jinwoo advises Bellion not to let his guard down around Beru, as an insect's greatest strength is its determination. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Beijing Airport, where Liu Jigang has just arrived. Some people question his decision to help South Korea with their gate, while others praise his willingness to assist. Liu Jigang responds that those questioning his decision are foolish. He explains that their country is right next to South Korea, and that if Jinwoo fails to stop the beasts, he would also be unable to defeat them, and this is why he decided to help Jinwoo. Suddenly, Liu Jigang stops in his tracks and is shocked to see a massive Magisphere gate in his own country. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the monarchs, where the Dragon King is informed that the Shadow Monarch has turned against them. The Dragon King decides to deal with the Shadow Monarch personally and commands his dragon army to prepare for battle. After Beru loses the fight against Bellion, he begs Jinwoo for a rematch. Jinwoo questions why Beru wants the Grand Marshal position so badly, and Beru explains that he always wanted to keep fighting by his side. Jinwoo comes up with a simple solution and offers Beru the position to stand on his left side, while the Grand Marshal stands on his right. Beru, unable to hold back his tears, starts crying, and Jinwoo requests him to stop. Suddenly, Igris also requests a chance to be the Grand Marshal. Jinwoo mentions that Igris can stand behind him. He notices all the shadows gathering and wonders what they are up to. Out of nowhere, all the dragon shadows fire into the sky. Tusk smirks, mocking their firepower, and uses the Orb of Avarice to fire a massive flame into the sky that ripples across the entire island. The rest of the shadows start praising Tusk, and Tusk gives a thumbs up to his supporters. The dragon shadows feel disappointed, realizing that their flame power is nothing compared to Tusk's Hymn of Fire Dragon. Jinwoo thinks to himself that Tusk is cheating by using the Orb of Avarice. He notices a group of ant shadows carrying trunks and questions what they are doing. Bellion explains that the ant shadows are building a small house for Jinwoo to rest on the island. Jinwoo guesses that Beru might be behind this idea. Bellion, out of curiosity, asks why Jinwoo does not call back his soldiers into his shadow. Jinwoo reveals that he wants his shadows to have some breathing space, as they have spent a long time inside the dimensional rift. Jinwoo asks if Bellion misses his former Shadow Monarch. Bellion responds that he willingly became the first shadow when Ashborn obtained the power to command death. He explains that he fought alongside the Shadow Monarch against the rulers when they opposed the Absolute Being, and that he was with him for almost eternity and never doubted his judgment. Jinwoo requests more stories about their past. Bellion begins by explaining that he was a fruit hanging on the world tree before becoming a shadow. He reveals that all heavenly soldiers are born as fruits of the world tree and adds that the tree is so massive it can cover the entire sky with its branches. Jinwoo becomes intrigued by this new information and decides to warn everyone about the 8 Monarch armies that could attack Earth at any moment. He emphasizes that they should be especially careful of the Dragon King, as he has witnessed Antares' real strength through Ashbourne's memories. Jinwoo returns home and prepares a buffet of dishes for his family. His mother is surprised to see that he can cook so well. However, Jinwoo remains preoccupied with thoughts of the danger posed by Antares and realizes the need to prepare all the hunters to fight alongside him against the monarchs. His mother notices his unease and questions if something is wrong. She mentions that his father used to cook before going on dangerous missions and remarks that Jinwoo has similar traits to his father. Jinwoo reassures her that everything is fine and notices a visitor outside the door. Jinwoo sees Mr. Yu, Jinho's father, waiting outside, and Mr. Yu requests a few moments of his time. He begins by talking about his recovery from eternal slumber and how he initially thought he was special. After careful thought, he realized that Jinwoo might be behind it, since he and his mother are the only 2 people in the world who have woken up from eternal slumber. Mr. Yu asks why Jinwoo helped him, and Jinwoo explains that Mr. Yu struck him as a trustworthy person because he did not act desperately to make Jinwoo cure his eternal slumber. Mr. Yu asks if Jinwoo would have refused to help him if he had used Jinho to force him to cure the disease. Jinwoo clarifies that he would not help him if he had used Jinho. Mr. Yu pleads for a way to repay Jinwoo's kindness. Jinwoo calmly states that he does not want anything in return, but suddenly remembers his family and requests Mr. Yu to take care of them if something happens to him. Mr. Yu gladly accepts Jinwoo's request. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Wu, who shows the colossal gate that has spawned in China. He mentions that 7 similar gates have appeared across the world simultaneously. Chairman wonders if the magic beasts that will emerge from the gates might be Jinwoo's army. Jinwoo clarifies that they are enemies and boldly asks if Chairman Wu trusts him. Chairman Wu starts sweating and assures Jinwoo that he completely trusts him. Jinwoo steps closer and hopes that Chairman Wu will believe what he is about to show. Jinwoo shares all of Ashbourne's memories with Chairman Wu. Chairman Wu drops to his knees as he overwhelmed by the shocking truth about the rulers and monarchs. He reveals that he always believed the gods gave them special powers to save humanity from magic beasts, but now realizes he misunderstood everything. Chairman Wu understands that only awakened beings will survive the war, and that the war is actually between the monarchs and rulers, not between monarchs and humans. He realizes that Earth is merely being used as their battlefield. Chairman Wu asks if Jinwoo plans to fight all the monarchs alone. Jinwoo confirms that he does, and Chairman Wu agrees to help him to the best of his ability. Chairman Wu gathers important officials from 152 countries at Jinwoo's request. One member notices that Chairman Wu looks more nervous than usual and asks what Jinwoo told him. Chairman Wu explains that he saw a large number of dragons emerging from the darkness and how they could burn the entire Earth with a single breath. Chairman Wu wonders how Jinwoo plans to defeat the monarchs. He calls Jinwoo to inform him that all the officials have arrived and asks about his whereabouts. Jinwoo suddenly appears behind him using his shadow exchange skill. Chairman Wu remarks that there is no point in asking Jinwoo about his location anymore. He worries that the officials might panic if they learn the truth about the gates and magic beasts. Jinwoo calmly states that he is aware of the danger, but insists that this is their only way to win against the monarchs. Meanwhile, the conference begins, and Brennan is amazed to see all the important members from each country gathered based on Jinwoo's request. He hopes that Jinwoo will reassure them that everything will end well, just like the last time he fought the monarchs. Jinwoo starts speaking and shocks everyone by stating that this will be a tough time for all of them. He warns that the monarchs can destroy everything in their sight in no time. One individual refuses to believe Jinwoo's warning and claims that the national-level hunters can stop the monarchs. Jinwoo boldly informs them that not even national-level hunters will be able to stop the monarchs, as there will be hundreds of beasts stronger than the Dragon Kamish. The officials demand proof and question if Jinwoo has lost his mind. Suddenly, Jinwoo creates multiple gates, which causes panic among the officials as they realize that Jinwoo has the ability to create a large number of gates at the same time. Jinwoo explains that he can create gates whenever he wants and reveals that the monarchs have the same ability. He adds that the monarchs are taking time because they have a massive army to prepare. One of the members, unable to process this information, angrily accuses Jinwoo of being on the monarch's side. He questions if Jinwoo is summoning the soldiers himself to kill them and declares that he does not trust anything Jinwoo says. Connor interrupts the conversation and asks for more details about the type of beasts they can expect from the the colossal gate and how to handle the situation. Jinwoo firmly declares that they should run as far away from the gate as possible. Jinwoo's warning creates a ripple effect and fear spreads among the officials. Everyone becomes terrified of the magic beasts that might break out from the gates, and they scramble to get as far away as possible. Meanwhile, Jinwoo travels to a remote island and sees a large castle constructed for him. Jinwoo feels displeased and commands Beru to put his head to the ground. He questions why Beru built a large castle instead of a small house. Beru nervously explains that Jinwoo deserves a house of this size. Jinwoo becomes irritated when he notices a flag, and Bellion also puts his head to the ground, revealing that the flag was his idea. Unexpectedly, Jinwoo asks Bellion what would happen to his shadows if he dies, and if the Grand Marshal would take his place. Bellion reveals that if anything happens to Jinwoo, all his shadows would return to nothingness, as their lives are tied to their king's existence. Jinwoo realizes that the greatest strength of his army is their loyalty, which makes them prioritize their master's orders over their own lives. He understands that the monarch's army will try to exploit this loyalty to their advantage. Igris mentions that their army will not stand a chance against the monarch's army in an all-out war. Jinwoo questions Bellion if he knows the exact size of the monarch's army. Bellion estimates that the monarchs might have an army more than 100 times greater than theirs. Jinwoo comprehends that the monarchs could have as many as 10 million soldiers. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Jay Mills, who is a Canadian S-rank hunter. He criticizes Jinwoo for declaring that everyone should stay away from the gates. The reporter suggests that Jinwoo's warning should not be ignored, as he is one of the most skilled hunters in the world. Jay dismisses this and argues that they should not blindly believe everything Jinwoo says, even though he is the strongest hunter. He boldly claims that he is not afraid of Jinwoo's words and accuses Jinwoo of planning to take control of all the gates for himself. Meanwhile, Chairman Wu shows the footage of Jay's interview and informs that all the hunters in Canada are rallying around Jay Mills. He adds that a few countries like India with their strongest hunters are planning to start their own raids, and asks Jinwoo what they should do about it. Jinwoo decides to eliminate the closest threat to Korea and focus on China first, as it is impossible for him to face all 8 armies at once. Jinwoo understands that prolonging the war increases his chances of winning and decides to deal with the other monarchs later. Jinwoo arrives at the China airport and sees Liu Zhigang waiting for him. Jinwoo remarks that he was told government officials would greet him, but never expected to see Liu Zhigang. Liu Zhigang explains that he decided to escort Jinwoo himself after seeing their officials making ridiculous posters for him. Jinwoo notices the colossal gate from the airport, and Liu Zhigang introduces 100,000 of China's strongest hunters. Jinwoo is intrigued by the large number of hunters and feels a glimmer of hope that they might actually win. Liu Zhigang confidently states that every single hunter is a highly skilled elite. Suddenly, Jinwoo summons his shadows, which startles Liu Zhigang. The entire area fills with all 1 million of Jinwoo's shadows. Out of nowhere, Beru becomes frustrated with Liu Zhigang and declares that the left spot of his king belongs to him. Jinwoo asks Beru to calm down and explains that Liu Zhigang is on their side. Liu Zhigang realizes that Jinwoo can even communicate with his summoned beasts. Meanwhile, the gate cracks open and Bellion strangely senses no presence of enemies around the gate. Jinwoo requests Bellion to check the other gates. Bellion communicates with the other shadows and reports that the situation is the same at all the gates. Jinwoo wonders why all the colossal gates are empty and suddenly understands the reason. He realizes that the monarchs might decide to attack a gate farthest from him instead of attacking around the world. The scene shifts to a gate in Canada, where all the hunters prepare to start the raid. Jay Mills mocks those who trusted Jinwoo's prophecy. It is revealed that Russia and Japan have decided to help Jinwoo with the gate in China. Fortunately, no colossal gate has spawned in Japan, and everyone wonders if Jinwoo's warning will come true. The citizens of Canada support their hunters' decision to ignore Jinwoo's warning and express confidence in their hunters to protect their land. Suddenly, the gate cracks open and no beasts emerge. The hunters begin to think that Jinwoo might have been bluffing. Unexpectedly, an individual steps through the gate. The hunters see a single magic beast looking down at them. Jay Mills is confused and wonders if the figure might be human. Antares asks Jay if he is the king of their land. Jay becomes nervous, hearing Antares speak in human language. One of the hunters explains that some beasts possess intelligence equal to humans and are capable of making their own armor and establishing societies based on class systems. Jay Mills is intrigued by the possibility of communicating with the beasts. He speculates that Jinwoo might have recruited his shadows from the first colossal gate in Korea in a similar way. Jay wonders if the beast will obey him if he claims to be the king, and asks what Antares will do if he declares himself the king. Antares ignores him and notices that Jinwoo is not present at their location. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to China, where Jinwoo tries to contact Canada for an update on the gate. He suddenly remembers Adam White from the Federal Bureau of Hunters and decides to call him. Jinwoo asks about the colossal gate and senses something is wrong while talking to Adam. He asks about Adam's location. Adam reveals that he is at the gate in Canada to provide backup. Jinwoo questions why Adam is in Canada since he is not a hunter. Adam explains that they cannot ignore their neighboring country and that he is one of the agents from the Federal Bureau dispatched to Canada. Jinwoo becomes upset that no one is taking his warning seriously and asks if anything unusual has happened at the gate. Adam reports that everything seems fine and that the gate in Canada is empty. Suddenly, Adam informs Jinwoo that an individual resembling a human has emerged from the gate. Jinwoo urges Adam to run away immediately, but Adam is frozen in place, unable to comprehend how a single beast burned all the top-ranking hunters in an instant. Adam describes how all the elite hunters have been turned to ashes. Jinwoo urges him to escape, and Adam reports that countless dragons are descending from the gate. Jinwoo decides to save Adam and tries to contact the shadow he planted on him. Suddenly, a high orc shadow grabs Adam and Jinwoo informs him that he will teleport him to safety. Adam notices Antares approaching him with a deathly gaze and becomes completely overwhelmed by his presence. Antares uses his breath of destruction to kill both the High Orc Shadow and Adam White. Jinwoo feels terrible for not foreseeing this outcome. He understands that his Shadow army will grow stronger as the battle drags on, but realizes that Antares is trying to shorten the war by gathering all his forces in one place. The Monarchs plan to use the 8 gates as distractions and sent their entire army into the gate furthest from Jinwoo. This strategy forces Jinwoo into an all-out war. Jinwoo reflects on how his plan has been completely disrupted and worries that there might be nothing he can do to turn the odds in his favor. Antares enjoys the massive destruction and the screams of humans. He declares that the sound of human demise is like music to his ears. The entire country of Canada is overrun with dragons, and all the cities are engulfed in flames. Antares meets with the other monarchs and commands them to destroy everything in their path. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Brennan, who watches the destruction unfold on TV. He is in disbelief that all his agents and Canadian hunters are dead. He feels a deep sadness as he realizes that the disaster is beyond human intervention. Brennan worries that America might be the next target and finally understands why Jinwoo warned everyone to stay as far away from the gates as possible. He decides to have his final whiskey before the end of the world. Suddenly, Jinwoo appears using his shadow exchange skill, which startles Brennan and brings him back to his senses. Jinwoo apologizes for the intrusion and requests the runestone from the dragon Kamish. Brennan explains that the runestone belongs to their country, but quickly realizes that the stone will mean nothing if their country is destroyed. He decides to give the runestone to Jinwoo and asks what he plans to do with the runestone. Jinwoo explains that he needs the stone to counter the monarch's plan. Brennan seeks clarification and asks why the rulers left the runestones inside the magic beasts. Jinwoo reveals that the runestones are gifts from the rulers designed to help hunters hunt magic beasts more efficiently. He adds that the rulers' ultimate plan is to increase mana on Earth by making humans fight the magic beasts and sacrificing some humans for the greater cause. He further adds that when a magic beast dies, all its abilities are sealed within the runestone. Brennan asks if Jinwoo truly believes he can win the battle. Jinwoo admits that he is not sure, but requests another favor from Brennan. Both Brennan and Jinwoo visit Selner late at night. Selner is surprised by their unexpected visit and remarks that Jinwoo seems like a different person. She explains that Jinwoo used to be possessed by darkness, but now he has become the darkness itself. Jinwoo calmly states that he is still the same person, but has embraced the darkness that Selner saw in him before. Jinwoo asks if Selner can foresee the future and requests her to look into his future. Selner is taken aback by his request, but after a moment of thought, she agrees to help him. She holds his hand and suddenly starts crying. She asks if Jinwoo truly intends to bear the entire burden alone. Jinwoo feels reassured that his plan is on the right track. Still crying, Selner questions if Jinwoo plans to sacrifice himself to protect everything, and heartbroken that a single human would carry the weight of protecting the entire world. Jinwoo explains that he is happy knowing that everyone else will be safe. Selner becomes frustrated at his words and laments that no one will remember his heroic actions and that his fight will be a lonely one. Jinwoo suddenly excuses himself and uses his shadow exchange skill to appear on top of a building. Jinwoo decides to call Chahain one last time. Chahain is surprised to hear from him, and Jinwoo explains that he has been busy lately. Chahain mentions that they have not had time to catch up because of the gates and the ongoing battles. Jinwoo confidently assures her that they will meet again. Cha Hae-in asks him to promise that he will return to see her. Jinwoo promises as she requested. Cha Hae-in feels happy after talking to Jinwoo, but is interrupted when Choi Jong-in informs her that they need to leave. All the South Korean hunters along with S-rank hunters from China and Japan have joined forces. Thomas also decides to help in the fight, and hundreds of thousands of hunters are on their way to Canada to face the monarchs. Antares grows impatient and wonders why Jinwoo has not shown up to fight him despite the millions of humans he has killed. Eventually, Antares becomes bored and starts to question if Jinwoo will ever show up to face him. Antares is confused about why Jinwoo remains silent despite all the destruction and wonders what he is planning. He speculates that Jinwoo might be afraid of his 10 million magic beasts and believes it would be suicide for Jinwoo to fight with his shadows. He assumes Jinwoo has probably run to the ends of the earth. Suddenly, Antares is struck by a missile, but it shatters before reaching him. More missiles are launched at him, and a massive blast occurs that shakes the entire city. The missile crew member believes he has killed the enemy, but is shocked when huge flames erupt from Antares. Antares transforms into a giant dragon using spiritual body manifestation and becomes irritated at being attacked with such weak weapons. He unleashes his breath attack and effortlessly destroys the aircraft. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the castle where Jinwoo is deep in thought about how to defeat the monarchs. He notices the words "My King" written on the wall and remembers how he made Beru bow with his head to the ground. He feels happy about Beru's kind gesture and thanks him for building the castle. Beru starts crying as he worries about his king's safety. Bellion expresses concern about Jinwoo's dangerous plan, and Igris agrees with him. Jinwoo understands that his shadows are worried about him and explains that sometimes they need to attack overpowered enemies in unexpected ways. He remarks that Ashbourne admired him for his approach to dealing with overwhelming enemies. Jinwoo asks Bellion what the former Shadow Monarch would do in his position. Bellion recalls how Ashbourne was in his ruler form and explains that he would stop at nothing and attack the enemy with everything he had. Jinwoo smiles at Bellion's response, and Bellion is surprised by how much Jinwoo resembles Ashbourne in his methods of dealing with enemies. He finally understands why the former Shadow Monarch chose Jinwoo. Bellion, Igris, and Beru kneel before Jinwoo and express their desire to stand by their king until the very end. Jinwoo decides to implement his plan, and they all prepare to head out. Suddenly, Jinwoo checks his phone, and Bellion advises him to contact his family as it might be his last chance. However, Jinwoo decides not to call them as he fears hearing their voices might make him change his mind. He worries that he might not move forward with his plan and decides to break his phone into pieces. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Canada, where Antares continues attacking the remaining aircraft. He eventually destroys it completely. However, one crew member successfully escapes and lands safely. Another crew member sees him, but is suddenly eaten alive by a magic beast. The surviving crew member notices something approaching him and turns to see a magic beast trying to devour him. He barely escapes and finds a weapon nearby. He grabs it and fires continuously at the magic beast, but the gun runs out of bullets. The magic beast approaches him, and he gives up on his life. He closes his eyes, but when he opens them, he finds the magic beast dead and sees Jinwoo standing with a pair of daggers. Jinwoo tells him to run away, but the crew member is still in shock at the sight of Jinwoo. Suddenly, a group of magic beasts tries to attack Jinwoo, and the crew member warns him about the approaching enemies. Jinwoo uses his commander's authority to freeze them in midair and slashes all of them in an instant. He takes the first step to start the war and raises the shadows using shadow extraction. Antares senses Jinwoo's presence and remarks that the Shadow Monarch has appeared on the Eastern Front. Yogamut suggests launching a full-scale attack on Jinwoo, while Tarnak informs that Jinwoo is not carrying his shadows with him and has split them into groups. Antares speculates that Jinwoo might be planning to take out his forces single-handedly. He feels confident that Jinwoo is avoiding an all-out war, but remains confused about the Shadow Monarch's actual plan. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Chairman Wu, who watches the news on TV. The newsreader reports that contact with the Canadian hunters has been lost, and that the U.S. government is dispatching military forces to buy time for civilian evacuations. Chairman Wu remarks that all hell has broken loose on the other side of the planet. He observes that even with the strongest military force, America has fallen victim to the beasts. He prays for a miracle and tries to hold back his tears as he begs God to show mercy on them. The scene shifts back to the battlefield, where the shadows begin attacking the magic beasts. They gradually clear the area by slashing through the beasts. Meanwhile, Jinwoo continues his rampage and slashes a giant magic beast. Suddenly, he notices another giant attempting to squash him, and a single strike shakes the ground. Jinwoo leaps away and dashes toward the giant, slashing its leg and causing it to fall. The dragon's shadows follow up by biting its throat with their sharp teeth. Jinwoo looks up at the sky and sees countless dragons attacking him. He remarks that he cannot sense Antares' presence and realizes that they are still holding back from going all out. Jinwoo decides not to be disappointed by Antares' absence, as there is still time. He resolves to make Antares take the first move and uses shadow extraction to raise more shadows. A large dragon shadow arises and devours another dragon completely. A giant shadow emerges, but is instantly killed by a dragon's breath attack. The dragon becomes furious that Jinwoo is opposing their Dragon King with mere shadow puppets made of mana and vows to destroy their king's enemy in his honor. To its surprise, Jinwoo appears behind it and comments that it talks too much. Before the dragon can react, Jinwoo charges at it and slashes its head. Antares realizes that Jinwoo is growing stronger with each battle and orders his forces to attack. He commands Yogamon to stay behind and prepare for the Shadow Monarch's ambush. Antares resolves to make Jinwoo pay and vows not to let him escape for his betrayal. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a battle between the military and the giants. A soldier orders his team to attack the giants' legs to restrict their movements and buy time until reinforcements arrive. Suddenly, a magic beast devours one of the soldiers, and another beast charges at them. An individual appears and punches the beast, sending it flying. Thomas arrives to assist and confidently states that he has fought common beasts in dungeons before, and that these magic beasts stand no chance against them, even if they are outnumbered. Suddenly, Thomas senses a strange presence. Tarnak recognizes him from his fight with Rakan and calls him a weak vessel who almost died at the hands of the Monarch of Fangs. Tarnak introduces himself as the Monarch of Steel. He warns Thomas that he can end his life in an instant and questions why he is standing against him despite being outnumbered. To everyone's surprise, Thomas summons all the shadows hiding within his own shadow. Belian greets Tarnak and remarks that it has been a while since they last met. Tarnak is shocked to see the large number of shadows and realizes that Thomas has been hiding them. He understands that he has been baited by the Shadow Monarch and decides to inform Antares about Jinwoo's plan. However, Tarnak is unable to contact Antares and notices a shadow using magic to block all communication. The shadow is Tusk, who uses his Orb of Avarice to disrupt all signals between the monarchs. Tarnak wonders how the Shadow Monarch came up with such a plan. He realizes that this is not how they usually fight, as they typically engage their enemies head-on. He finally understands that this strategy must have been devised by a human. Tarnak angrily remarks that a mere human has no right to be the Shadow Monarch. Beru becomes enraged and warns Tarnak to take back his words or face the consequences for insulting his king. Tarnak becomes annoyed that a mere shadow is threatening him and uses spiritual body manifestation to transform. Meanwhile, both Jinwoo and Antares begin walking toward each other. Both Jinwoo and Antares start gazing at each other, and
Their aura fills the entire surrounding.